So it seems to me that if somebody does not do cocaine, they're just going to say, oh, of course I don't do cocaine, right? If somebody does do cocaine, then they might tell me, but they also might just not fill out the question. So after I collect the data, if I'm looking back and I see maybe, I don't know, 90% of people said, no, I don't do cocaine, right? And 5% of people said, yes, I do cocaine, and 5% of people left it blank, right? My guess is that the percent of people who do cocaine is probably more like 10%, right? Probably the people who didn't answer were really yeses. That's my guess. It's something close to that. But I don't necessarily have any way to figure out what to do about that, right? I don't necessarily have that information. So that if I did what I just did, I said I'm going to assume anybody who left it blank really meant yes. That would just be a complete assumption on my part. So the idea with missing not at random is that you are pretty much stuck, right? You need to ask other questions on your survey that might help achieve missing at random, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So if your data is truly missing not at random, you're stuck, because whether you answer the question, do you do cocaine, is correlated with your answer, do you do cocaine? So I really don't have a informed way to move forward with analyzing that data. But suppose that I ask other questions in my survey that people do answer that are correlated with whether you do cocaine. Well, then I would be back to missing at random, right? So missing at random happens when whether a value is missing is correlated with other information that I do have, okay? So suppose, this is actually something people really do, that I also included on my survey other questions about behavioral risks. And you've now already looked at the BRFS, the Behavioral Risk Survey. So a common question about behavioral risks is, do you usually wear a seatbelt when you're in a car? Now, people do answer that question. People do. They will tell you whether they use a seatbelt in a car, and most people do, right? Which is good. But they will tell you honestly, they will answer the question. Most people will not feel that they have to leave that question blank. But there is a correlation between whether you wear a seatbelt and whether you do cocaine. Now, I'm not saying that anyone who leaves off their seatbelt uses cocaine. I'm not saying that. However, I am saying that the kind of person who regularly does not wear a seatbelt has a higher probability of doing cocaine than the kind of person who always wears a seatbelt. There are correlations between various risk-taking behaviors. So if I include two questions in my survey, one of them is, do you wear a seatbelt? And another one is, do you do cocaine? Then I can look at the people who answered both questions, right? And see what the correlation is between seatbelt use and cocaine use, and use that to make a best guess at the cocaine answers for the people who didn't tell me about their cocaine use, right? So if you didn't tell me about your cocaine use, but you say that you do wear a seatbelt, I observe in the rest of the data set that people who wear seatbelts don't do cocaine. So now I understand what your answer would have been. If you did not answer the question about cocaine, and I see that you don't wear a seatbelt, well, maybe in the data set that is the part of the data set that's not missing, among people who don't wear seatbelts, maybe 10% of them use cocaine. And now I know that you have a 10% chance of being a cocaine user, as far as I can tell from my data. So again, if it's missing not at random, you're just stuck, right? But you could perhaps design your survey to ask other related questions that would help you achieve missing at random instead, which is a more useful type of missing data to have.